Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us tonight for Cocktails and Vinyl. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
We have Shawn with us tonight. Shawn, is this your third time?
Believe this is the third time doing cocktails and vinyl. Yeah. And then I did a coffee and vinyl the very first time I ever did a live stream with you. So, yeah, I'm starting to become a seasoned veteran at this.
I know. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Say hello to a couple people.
Hey, TC.
Maybe three. Hey, TC. Yeah. And then Mary says, "Hi, everyone. RecordKrate thought I'd check out your show tonight for a little bit. Thank you for stopping by. Two hip chicks, Mary. Oh, hey, Junkin Data Girl. Cha-cha. Thanks for stopping by. Good to see you." So I've been using this little feature recently with some guests, and I'm going to see if we can make it happen. That way I can still hang out with you when you're showing some cool records.
And, oh, hey, look at that.
There you go. Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
On your shirt, is that a jazz band?
Yeah, no. These guys aren't jazz. These guys are a little something called thrash metal.
There you go.
This is my usual, Sunday uplifting and glory soundtrack.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hey, Myra Lane, Danica? I don't see Danica, but hey, Danica, if you're here.
I've actually got some stuff tonight that Myra might be interested in based on something she asked about on the very first coffee and vinyl that I did way back in the day.
Well, that's totally cool. Before we get started showing records, I want to remind everybody that Friday is Record Store Day, Black Friday. And Shawn, any titles you saw on the list that you thought maybe would be really cool to have?
So I thought I have to look again. There were a couple. I haven't looked in a couple of weeks, but I've got a couple marked down. Sorry, I wasn't prepared for that.
Well, I went and I was intrigued, so I went on YouTube and listened to some of the Jazz Sabbath, and it just took me down a rabbit hole of other cool jazz artists that I wasn't familiar with. Hey, KK, thanks for joining us tonight. Yeah, thank you, everybody. My guest tonight this way is Shawn for Cocktails and Vinyl, and so we do it. I do it occasionally on Tuesdays, and hey, if you can't do the early morning thing, we can sometimes do this on Tuesday.
This is an opportune time to do Cocktails and Vinyl for me as well, because this morning started off with a trip to the dentist to get a root canal and a core buildup because I cracked a tooth on Saturday. And so I got a sore mouth, but you know what? That's nothing a little ibuprofen and a little hooch can't fix. So.
There you go. Yeah. All right. Intrigue us now.
Show us some cool things. So I mean, it's getting to be the holiday season, right? So I figured, now that we're all going to be spinning some Christmas records, certainly myself included, probably show a few nice old-timey Christmas records that are staples in my house every holiday season. So first is absolutely my favorite Christmas album of all time, and I am totally stoked to have an original pressing of this. This is a Charlie Brown Christmas 1965 stereo pressing. This is absolutely the cleanest copy I'm likely to ever see in my life. And I totally lucked into it because a friend of mine in Minneapolis found himself an original mono pressing that was in similar shape. And so he basically charged me for shipping and gave me this. So that was awfully nice of him. But, these are really hard to find because this album wasn't, there's the old fantasy label there. These actually didn't sell very well in the 60s. A Charlie Brown Christmas didn't really become the Christmas classic. The album, I should say, didn't really become the Christmas classic that it's seen as today until like the late 70s and very early 80s, when all the kids that watched it live on TV in 1965 sort of grew up and were getting a bit nostalgic about their childhood. And that's when it started to sell a bajillion copies and get reissued every year. And all that kind of thing. But originally that actually sold really poorly. And of course, the copies that were bought were all probably given to kids. And we all know kids took great care of their records, right? So yeah, finding those clean is generally a fool's errand. So I'm very, very stoked to have that.
And then Friday for Record Store Day, Black Friday, there's going to be a 7-inch single from that record there.
That's right. Yeah, I remember seeing that. That would be a cool thing to have, definitely.
It's on green vinyl. Hey, Day Tripper. Thanks for stopping us, Craig. Thanks for stopping by, Craig. I appreciate it. Yolanda's here. Hello, Yolanda. Thanks for stopping
Yolanda.
by. Wow, that is a beautiful. I had a 70s reissue, but it disappeared along the Life of Roll.
Oh, man, that sucks.
Yeah. I can't believe it's going to be on PBS this year. Weird. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Adam, hear about that? TV has the rights to A Charlie Brown Christmas this year. And part of the agreement for that was that they have to make it available to anybody for certain days. I think it's December 11th through the 13th. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's what it is. And the only reason I know this is because we watch A Charlie Brown Christmas every year. I mean, it's just part of our holiday routine. But yeah, so they have to make it available for anybody to stream, but this is going to be the first year since 1965 that A Charlie Brown Christmas will not be on network TV. Now, I hadn't heard about PBS, but if PBS is going to show it, then that would make sense, I guess, a little bit. At least then it will be on network TV and available to more people.
I bet Charles Schultz is rolling in his grave.
Yeah. You know, and it's funny because that movie, I mean, everybody thought it was going to be a colossal flop. When the animation studio was done, Bill Melendez, he was in charge of the animation. When he saw it, Bill Melendez was behind Looney Tunes and all of that stuff. When he saw it, he said, wow, we really killed this. And he didn't mean that in a good way, right? I mean, he thought it was terrible. The CBS network executives thought it was terrible, but by the time they saw it, it was too late to do anything about it, so they had to go forward. They were expecting the ratings to be horrible, and as it turned out, 75% of households were tuned into that night in 1965. It was a resounding success, the movie was. And as we talked about, the album, not so much until, the 80s or so, the late 70s and into the 80s.
I'm glad I have it on DVD so I can watch it that way this year.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So if A Charlie Brown Christmas is my favorite Christmas album of all time, this one is absolutely second. Phil Spector's Christmas album. This is also an original pressing. This is a recent arrival. And this thing is beautiful and sounds really awesome. Here's there you go. Now you can kind of see the blue tint, but that's the blue Phillies Records logo and label. So
very cool.
Yeah.
Hello, Adam NC is here with us.
The version of Christmas Baby Please Come Home on that record, the original version, is still, I think, 57 years later, the best. Right. PBS is a result of a deal with Apple TV after the internet went nuts. Yeah. All right. Well, good. It should be. That movie has become such an American tradition. It should not require an internet connection in order to view. I truly believe that.
As much as it's become so much of a tradition, I'm surprised it hasn't automatically become in the public domain.
Well, there's copyright laws and stuff about that. And I mean, eventually it will.
But some things go in public domain because it's so popular. I don't have an example right now, but I've read.
Yeah, there's the whole cultural ubiquity thing. It's sort of the reason that Xerox almost lost the rights to their own name back in the 80s, because the term Xerox just became completely synonymous with making a photocopy of something. And
exactly.
Yeah. And if I were to round out my top 3 Christmas albums, this would be number 3, Bing Crosby's Merry Christmas. This actually originally came out in 1945 as an album of 78s. I believe it was either 3 or 4 78s with one song per side and all that. And then it came out as a 10-inch LP in 1950. And then this is the first pressing 12-inch LP that was released in 1955. Got the old Decca logo on it. And as with many 50s Decca albums, it's styrene, not vinyl, which I don't like because styrene wears out.
Now you can find that record like crazy. It's so common, but it's hard to find early copies, and it's hard to find copies that are in beautiful condition. Those things were loved and played and thrown and
understandably so, man. I mean, there's a reason why these were played to death. This is an amazing Christmas album. Yeah. You know, I'm not the biggest Bing Crosby fan, but dude, this record is legit.
Absolutely.
If there was, I would be very interested to hear that, Myra.
There was one where the characters speak, and it is, well, I don't want to speak for everybody. I didn't keep it. I sold mine. Oh, so Katie, which is vintage and vinyl.
Yeah,
she had it on her on one of her videos this week.
Oh, that's cool. Wow, gatefold 45 set? Huh.
Oh, okay.
I didn't even know that existed. That's cool. Katie knows all kinds of stuff about especially like 50s. I mean, that's totally her wheelhouse. So yeah, I would defer to her on that.
You hear a lot of the on that record, Myra Lane.
Christmas in the Stars, huh? Wow.
Yeah.
That's wild. So this is a volume 1 and 2 thing, but in the late 90s and in the early 2000s, Capitol Records did this thing called Christmas Cocktails. And what they were these compilation CDs. There were 4 of them. And it was just stuff from Capitol Records vault, mainly 50s and 60s, but not crooners, right? It's like Martini Lounge, house band type of stuff. And so they came out in the 90s, early 2000s. The first 2 have now been reissued on vinyl. 3 and 4 have not. But these, if you find these are killer soundtracks for, just a holiday evening, sitting down, having a spiked eggnog or something. And there is just some great stuff on here. So I highly recommend these. These are staples in my house this time of year.
Absolutely. Space age bachelor music is just amazing.
Yeah. You know what? That's a great way to put it. Yeah. Space age bachelor music. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah. I even have one of the Ultra Lounge thingies that has a fuzzy cover.
Yeah.
Can I see the cover of yours again? Some of the covers were done by Shag. That's not.
This one's got like a mechanized martini shaker.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, right. To your point, right? The Ultra Lounge stuff. That was a whole series of things. It wasn't just the Christmas albums. It was a whole bunch of stuff. But yeah, there were some great releases in that series.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So
I didn't get that.
Well, thank you, Siri. I wasn't talking to you. All right. So next thing I will go over just some fun stuff, some newish releases, mainly in the rock and metal category that have not new releases but new arrivals for me that I'm rather stoked to have. So the last Cocktails and Vinyl I did, oh man, TC, that Ultra Lounge stuff is so good.
Yeah.
So anyway, the last time I did Cocktails and Vinyl, we sort of went over Van Halen, and I mentioned that I did not have the last Sammy Hagar album on vinyl, Balance, from 1995. Even though it was pressed on vinyl, they're ridiculously priced in the used market. Turns out a friend of mine on the West Coast had 2 copies of it, and I managed to work out a trade, so I didn't have to spend a ton of money. And this thing is beautiful. And so I am thrilled to have this. I love Balance. There are so many good songs on here. The Seventh Seal, Can't Stop Loving You, Don't Tell Me What Love Can Do. God, Doing Time, Aftershock. There are so many great songs on here. So,
very cool.
Yeah, very happy to have that.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
KKK said that she's going to be doing show and tell of her collection of albums either tonight or early morning. She likes to do the late night live streams, which is awesome.
Late night ones are easier for me to catch, so I may have to check that out. Thanks for letting us know, Kathy.
Yeah, I'll have to get you to put a link in the chat of your thingy. Kurt says howdy. Good, thank you, howdy.
Hey, Kurt.
Yeah. Maybe you can come join us one morning, KK, for coffee and vinyl.
So here's another one. This is a 90s classic, and it's one of those that I feel like a lot of people know, but it's still kind of sort of forgotten. From 1990, Concrete Blonde's Bloodletting. There was a pretty good radio hit on this called Joey.
Joey,
but
absolutely.
Joey's a great song, but man, I mean, Joey probably isn't even in the top 3 tracks on this album. This record is just solid start to finish. And, you know, I've always been a very big fan of Johnette Napolitano's nice, you know, smoky alto voice. She's another one I would listen to her sing the phone book. Yeah, stoked to have that. Something else that you never really find going into 80s metal, Wasp. Their original pressings of their stuff are tough to find. They're not expensive, but I managed to come across this recently, and this thing's in gorgeous shape. And this album is everything that was right about 80s heavy metal, man. Absolutely. And this still got the custom inner sleeve. Yeah, Concrete Blonde was awesome. Yeah. And then this Wasp album also still has the merch form on it. So that was just too cool. That was just too cool to pass up.
Do you remember when we thought, well, do you remember I thought, thank you, KK, for putting that in the chat. There's a link to her channel.
Oh, awesome.
I was going to say, do you remember? I remember when I used to think Wasp was so heavy.
Oh, I know. Yeah, right. And then you go and you listen to it now and you're kind of like, you know, yeah.
It's so poppy. Yeah. It's like Bobby Sherman with distorted guitars.
But you know what, man? If you can listen to that Wasp record and not get a little bit worked up and get into it, you're a better man than I.
Yeah. I mean, Wasp is so good to pop on every once in a while and listen to just because it's like, there's an hell in Texas. I mean, they're just so cool. They're fun.
Yeah.
I used to think they were so heavy. I used to think they were so satanic. and then that preacher cat went on the road with him, Bob Larson.
Yeah.
And that it's crazy to watch those interviews he did with him.
Okay, so so speaking of you know, metal from that time period, one of the things that probably defined thrash metal certainly or was a big influence on it was an original copy of Motorhead's Ace of Spades. Been looking for a U.S. copy of this for a long time, man. Every time you find these are just freaking roached. As you know, everybody that had them back then just played them until you could see through them, you know. Yeah. So,
at least one song, huh?
Yeah. No, no, man. I mean, that whole record's solid start to finish. But you know, I mean, you know, when it comes to Motorhead, right? It's Lemmy's voice, right? You either dig it or you don't. You know, he's got that, you know, 3 packs a day sort of voice, and yeah, that's something you either dig or you don't. But man, I always thought his voice just went perfectly with the music.
There's 2 Record Store Day Black Friday Motorhead records.
Which ones?
I don't remember, but there's 2 of them. Yeah.
Poor Lemmy, man. You know what though, Kurt? That guy lived his life on his terms. I'm sure he has no regrets.
Not at all. Hawkwind too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I love Hawkwind. They were great. So, Adam, here's a cool one for you. So last time I did Cocktails and Vinyl, right? Went and I showed off all those Black Sabbath albums, including all the Tony Martin ones I had.
Uh-huh.
So there was one missing, was Forbidden from 1995. This had the same lineup that was on Tier in 1990. So this was Tony Iommi, Tony Martin, Cozy Powell, and Neil Murray. And this was released in 95. And these aren't difficult to find on vinyl, but they are very difficult to find legit copies, because the only official vinyl release. Oh, cool. Oh man, I bet that was a killer show, Kurt. Yeah. So with Forbidden, there was one legit vinyl pressing done anywhere in the world, and that was Brazil. And it's very easy. I won't get into all the minutia of identifying a legit copy, but it's extremely easy to identify a legit copy. And of course, they don't come up very, very, very. I don't think they're mega expensive when they do, because a lot of people don't really like that album. I personally don't mind it. I wouldn't say it's my favorite. I would say it's probably Black Sabbath's worst album. But saying Black Sabbath's worst album is sort of like saying you only found $20 on the ground instead of 40, right? You still found money on the ground. But yeah, so with that, I now have original vinyl pressings of every single Black Sabbath studio album. That was the last one I needed.
Very cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Hello, Elliot.
Hi, Elliot.
Thanks for joining.
So speaking of being satanic, right, and Wasp and thinking they were satanic, this record, Venom, At War with Satan. So this is like a concept album, and I'll just go ahead and say it, not to offend anybody's sensibilities, but this album has so much Satan that it forks my tongue and puts fire in my eyes and levitates me off the ground. So this is a Canadian pressing, and the reason I didn't do a US is because this didn't come out in the US for about a year after release, and Combat Records in the US that put it out completely screwed with the packaging. They didn't put a custom inner sleeve in it. There was no gatefold, and like the packaging was very important in this album. And so in the year that it wasn't in the US yet, there were a bunch of Canadian copies that snuck south of the border. And so that's one of these. And this is, if you like, I mean, just in your face metal that will just grab you by the throat and not let go for 35 minutes. This is a great one.
You hear that, Doc? Help us find some copies. Doc's in Canada.
Yeah, yeah, it's a Bonsai. Bonsai Records in Canada they put out like stuff from the small metal labels in the US, like Combat and Megaforce and those type of labels, the labels where you found Slayer and Metallica in the early days. Bonsai was the one that pressed and distributed those in Canada. And so that's where, that one's Bonsai. And then you brought up my shirt. For the longest time, I didn't have early Slayer, pre-major label Slayer when they were on Metal Blade, but got a gorgeous copy of Slayer's very first album, Show No Mercy. Killer. And then their second release was not an album, but an EP called Haunting the Chapel. And got that. And then their second full-length LP before they went on a major label, Hell Awaits. This is awesome as well. I've streamed these for a long time, but glad to finally have original vinyl of these, because they're not getting any easier to find. Last thing that I thought was really cool, lucked into a first edition of Black Flag's very first single from 1978 called Nervous Breakdown. And what's really cool about it is that in addition to having the original vinyl and the sleeve, so it's still got the inner bag with the SST record sticker on it. And so this is a scorcher of a disc. I think this, not that there are a ton to choose from. No, this is Keith Morris on vocals. So this is even before Ron Reyes and Des Cadena were doing vocals. And I was going to say, if I had to pick a pre-Henry Rollins Black Flag disc as being the best one, I would say this one by a slim margin. I mean, there aren't a lot to choose from. I think they did like three or four discs before Henry Rollins joined the band in '81, but this one is top shelf.
Well, what's that going for? Isn't that like $300?
It's pretty pricey. Yeah, this was another one that I did some trade on, and managed to work out a deal, so I didn't have to do a whole bunch of cash spin.
TC said Motorhead titles of Record Store Day Black Friday are Ace of Spades and On Parole.
Oh, it's remixed. That's a bummer. I've always kind of found remixing to be revisionist history in a way, because when you remix stuff, you can bring levels up on certain instruments, or you can, insert little things in there that were never there before, and it just gives you too much. Yeah, no, I'd probably pass on that if it's a remix.
I think one of them is a remix.
Man, that's kind of a bummer for me. But yeah, On Patrol. All right, so that'll be a good segue. So I remember the first time I did Coffee and Vinyl, at the very, very end, Myra, I hope she's still in the chat.
Mary Lane, where are you?
Myra had asked, I was showing off some hardcore 7-inches, and we were talking about how, that was cool because, those DIY bands would throw in stickers and inserts and all that kind of stuff, right? And so she had asked if I had any Dead Kennedys. And I said I had one Dead Kennedy 7-inch, and that was Too Drunk to F. And I had mentioned that Dead Kennedys was a gaping hole in my punk library. And amazingly, I came into a cache of Dead Kennedys stuff that was not super expensive. And this is all original stuff with all of the extra goodies that it came in. And almost in a weekend, I got the entire Dead Kennedys discography, both LPs and 7-inch singles. I'm not even kidding. So here is a copy of their very first single. It's the first edition, California Uber Alles. This is from 1979. This is, this is where it all started. This is the Gray Alternative Tentacles label. The Alternative Tentacles is one of the most well-respected punk labels in the world still to this day. It was owned by the Dead Kennedys lead singer, Jello Biafra. And yes, sir, I'm getting there. Here's their next 7-inch, Holiday in Cambodia, with Police Truck on the B-side. That's got, this one has the lyric sheet with it. And then Kill the Poor. Kill the Poor was only released as a single in the UK, but Alternative Tentacles managed to get some copies that you could order via mail order in the US. The only thing that sucks is if you ordered one from mail order, which I assume this one was, it didn't include an insert, and it also didn't include the little button pin that they included in the UK if you bought this at a record store. So, it's cool to have the single. Kind of sucks that it doesn't at least have the insert, but that's okay. So the copy of Too Drunk that I showed the first time was a UK pressing. This is the US pressing on IRS Records. Forgive the profanity on the cover. But this one also has the lyric sheet. Here you go, Kurt. Nazi Punks with the armband. And this is the first edition where literally the sleeve are 2 Mylar printed inserts. And so that's the front one. And then there's one here in the back that has like lyrics and stuff printed on it. And so, I mean, this is, yeah. I mean, these aren't terribly hard to find, but you never find them with the armband. So very cool to have that.
Break out the overhead projector.
Yeah, right? So here's another one, Bleed for Me. No. So I think Nazi Punks actually was another one that you could get through distros that shipped out to small little punk record shops. I know you could probably order it through the Dead Kennedys label through Alternative Tentacles and all that. So, but yeah, I mean, you may have been able to get it through Maximum Rock and Roll. I mean, that's where you found out about a lot of hardcore and punk bands back in the day. I know it was through Maximum Rock and Roll, and Jello Biafra was part of Maximum Rock and Roll as well. So,
go ahead.
Oh, okay. So here's Bleed For Me. This was the next single. I'm doing these sequentially. This one's also got the lyric sheet with it. And then the very last Dead Kennedys single from 1982, Halloween. This one didn't have any extras with it, but that cover art, I swear to God.
I tell you.
And then real quick, so here's the very first LP, Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables. This one, so funny enough, this one came out in 1980, but wasn't released in the US until 1981 for about 6 months. And so what happened was when this came out, for about the first 6 months, the only way you could get this in America was to buy a UK copy, which there were some copies circulating. I guess, a distro or something must have got some in, and they were circulating. So you could absolutely buy this. This is a UK copy that was purchased in the US. But what's interesting is when IRS Records grabbed this 6 months later and put it out in the US, they put this out with the same album cover, but with this hideous orange tint that the band didn't approve. And the reason they did it was because they wanted to differentiate it from the Cherry Red Records UK import, which had already been around and was being sold. Well, the band had a fit over that, and so that orange cover was quickly pulled, and they went back to the black one. But this is the UK import, and the coolest thing about this one, other than the fact that it's a killer record and has has most of the Dead Kennedys' best known songs, it's also got the poster with it. So this poster is way too big for me to unfold and show on camera, but yeah, so very cool that it has the poster. It's also got the Cherry Red Records advertisement inner sleeve on it still. And, the main reason why I'm even spending time on this is just because the Dead Kennedys were such an important band to punk and to hardcore and just punk in general. I mean, they are, if Black Flag isn't the most important American punk band, then the Dead Kennedys absolutely are. Here's an original U.S. copy of their second album, Plastic Surgery Disasters. This one has, so this is an original as well. This one's still got the booklet with it, which I thought was awesome. I love how they always, and not only that, but I mean, they actually, were like adamant about putting their inserts. So let me see if I can get this on camera. If you look right here, you can see that it specifically tells you if you didn't get a booklet with this record, go back to the shop and demand one. And down here on the back page of the book, if you look at the very, very bottom, it tells you that if you bought a copy of Fresh Fruit and didn't get a poster, or if you've bought any of the singles and didn't get the lyric sheets, to mail it off and they would send you one. That
is awesome.
So yeah, I mean, obviously the band cared about the extras because, I mean, that's awesome, right? You mean the one that there's no way I could show on camera, Kurt? Maybe. Let's find out. So here's an original of Frankenchrist. This is from 1983, and so it's got the nice custom inner sleeve on it with the rounded corners. Oh yeah, there is something else in the jacket. I'm sorry, I cannot show this on camera. This is an extremely pornographic poster. This is a poster called Landscape 20. The artwork is called Landscape 20. It's by a Swiss artist named H.H. Geiger. And this poster, the fact that it was included in copies, got the offices of Alternative Tentacles Records raided in the mid '80s due to the fact that they included this poster. Jello Biafra was taken to court for distributing obscenity to minors over that poster. And so what they did was they took the poster out. And, oh, absolutely, they were. Yeah, I mean, snark was a hallmark of punk. I mean, everybody from the Sex Pistols to the Dead Kennedys. I mean, the Dead Kennedys got their message across through humor and snark. But anyway, yeah. So what they did was they took the poster out of all of those albums and they replaced it with an order form where you could then mail off to get the poster. But yeah, there was a whole obscenity trial and everything else about that poster. So finding these with the poster is yes. Kurt knows. I'm sorry, I can't talk about it. I will say this, right? The poster, like I said, the artwork, the H.H. Geiger artwork on the poster is called Landscape 20, but it's also known as Penis Landscape. So I'll leave it at that. Moving on, 1986, Bedtime for Democracy. This was the last proper Dead Kennedy studio album. Nice gatefold cover. Let's see, we've got the vinyl, and we've also got a nice newspaper that only would have been included in a Dead Kennedys record. And in addition to that, we've got a merch sheet, and also another newspaper thing. This was a No More Censorship fund. So, a lot of people know that Frank Zappa was the big voice against censorship in the 80s and fighting with the Parents Music Resource Center. The Dead Kennedys were right there with him. Right. And so the Dead Kennedys put out a lot of stuff about anti-censorship and things in their albums. And so this one, obviously, it's got, everything it's supposed to have, right down to the merch forms and the newspapers. And I mean, this was an unbelievable find, as you can tell. 1 second. Let me. Kurt, do you have most of this stuff as well? I'm guessing you do, considering you know what all's in it and everything else. Were you a DK's fan back in the day? Maybe you still are.
Well, I think he's probably got a lot of stuff.
Oh, I'm sure he does. Yeah, I don't. I need to do that, but no, Kurt, I don't have any of those, unfortunately. And then the last one is the awesome, man. Awesome. So here's Dead Kennedys. This is Give Me Convenience or Give Me Death. This is a 87 compilation that was released just after the band broke up. And this one got, the original, the original vinyl, of course. And there were a couple of different versions of this, but the earliest versions had, had an order form with it. And also came with this newspaper booklet. And the last thing on here that I thought was really awesome is this copy still has the bonus Flexi 7-inch. Later copies of this came with a hard vinyl 7-inch, and then copies after that didn't include the 7-inch at all. But this was the first version that still had a Flexi.
Have you played it?
I have not played it yet. I'm working my way through these. Problem is, I can't really listen to the Dead Kennedys, like at night and stuff when my wife's in the living room. She hates punk and she won't have it. So I normally have to listen to this stuff in the middle of the afternoon when I'm done working for the day and, the kids are upstairs or whatever. And so my time to listen to punk is, it has to be rationed. Yeah. So,
yeah. Elliot, I think there was more sold than what we could imagine. I mean, just because they're in the market.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so Elliot, a lot of these punk bands and hardcore bands in the 80s, most of the stuff that they did, they would start by pressing 500 copies, right? And if they sold out of those, they'd press pretty much. And then, if they ran out of the 500, they'd have another 500 pressed. And, it was that kind of thing. The Dead Kennedys were much more popular, though. They had a much bigger following. So I think it's probably fair to say that their pressings were well into the thousands, if not, say 10 to 20,000. So, to Adam's point, they're out there in the market. And the other thing is that most of them are not mega expensive when you find them. And the fact that they're not mega expensive means that there's enough out there still to satisfy demand. And with as many people out there that love the Dead Kennedys, the fact that you can still find original pressings for a decent price says that they're out there. Right. So,
but finding it with all the proper inserts is a little harder to find.
That's where it gets tough.
Yeah. Was that all the DK records you have?
That's all the DK stuff. The only thing that was not in that cache of Dead Kennedys records was the In God We Trust Incorporated, which was a 12-inch EP that they put out, I think, between the first and second album. And so I still need to get a copy of that at some point, but that's it. Otherwise, I've got every LP and every 7-inch they put out during their time as a band.
Yeah, I'm with you, Elliot. That Sharon Jones looks awesome.
Thank you. That was one of the ones that was on my list. Sharon Jones.
Absolutely.
That's good stuff.
Yeah. Misfits, first edition. The first record went for $570 on an auction I was following. Insane.
Kurt, check this out. A local record store here in the Triangle, Carolina Soul, got in a copy. Sorry, I don't mean to pimp somebody else on your live stream, Adam, but this is kind of important. So they got in a copy of the Misfits, a very first printing of the Misfits 7-inch single called Bullet. That's the one that has the like sketch of Kennedy in the backseat of the car with the bullet going through his head. And that was an original first copy. They put that on eBay like a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and it sold for $4,500. Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I was shocked that it went for that much. But hey, there's always it's 4,500. Yeah, close. Okay. Oh, did it go for 5,000 plus? I thought it went for 4,500. All right, maybe I'm wrong. Okay. So let's see what's next here. Yeah, pretty sure it was 4,500. Either way, it's a ton of money, right? I mean, at that point, 4,500 versus 5K. I mean, at that point, who's counting?
There you go.
So we all caught up on comments and everything else before I move on.
Move on.
All right. Cool. So I think it's become a tradition anytime I'm on that, I sort of seem to pick out a jazz label and kind of go over things. So, I've done Blue Note. I've done Impulse. Talked a little about Columbia. Yeah, I know, right? So tonight, if it's cool, I'd like to do a little presentation on Prestige. Because, Prestige is another one of the seminal jazz labels that started in 1949. And Prestige has put out some of the greatest recordings in the history of jazz, which is very interesting because the owner of Prestige, Bob Weinstock, he was always a thorn in Alfred Lyon's ass. Alfred Lyon was the founder of Blue Note, because everything Alfred did, Bob Weinstock did. Bob Weinstock was a perpetual copycat. He had his records pressed at the same place as Blue Note for a while. He would hire Blue Note's artist, Reed Miles, did some Prestige covers. He wanted his label to have the same kind of sound as Blue Note. Like, he was absolutely riding Blue Note's coattails. But be that as it is, that doesn't change the fact that Prestige has still put out some of the greatest recordings in the history of jazz, from artists varying from, Art Taylor to Miles Davis to John Coltrane to Sonny Rollins to Thelonious Monk. I mean, you name it, right? They all recorded for Prestige at some point back in the day. So first thing I'll show is a great guitar record. It's called Two Guitars by Kenny Burrell and Jimmy Rainey. This is awesome if you love jazz guitar. I would put this in probably my top 10 jazz guitar records of all time. This is amazing. This was something that they called the Prestige All-Stars, which was basically a revolving band of the best talent that was signed to Prestige at the time. This one's called Wheelin' and Dealin'. It's got Frank Wess on flute and John Coltrane, of course, on tenor, and Paul Quinchette on tenor as well. It's got Doug Watkins on bass, Art Taylor on drums. This is a who's who of people that were signed to Prestige at the time. This is a great album. Something that became very popular in jazz in the late 70s and into the 80s because of smooth jazz. This is not smooth jazz, by the way. Steve Lacy, soprano sax. Soprano sax was not very common in jazz in the 50s and the 60s, but it has an unbelievable sound to it, and it's got a great band on here. Wynton Kelly on piano, who played piano on Kind of Blue and countless other well-known jazz recordings. It's got Buell Neidlinger on bass and Dennis Charles on drums. So this is basically just a quartet, sax, piano, bass, and drums. Killer. This has a whole lot of soul, man. This one will get you down deep if you pay attention when you listen to it. John Wright Trio, Southside Soul. This is amazing. I love this album so much. Band on this are actually some relative unknowns. I mean, John Wright is known pretty well for piano, but it's got a guy named Wendell Roberts on bass and Walter McCants on drums. I've heard of Walter McCants before, but I think this is the only recording I have with Wendell Roberts on bass. I don't know much about him, but this is a killer recording. This is a collector's dream for Prestige. This is considered one that jazz collectors really like. I mean, I own this to play it because I love it. Art Taylor's Wailers. You can see the people that play on this record: Donald Byrd on trumpet, Jackie McLean on alto, John Coltrane on tenor, Charlie Rouse on tenor. I mean, good Lord. Ray Bryant on piano, Red Garland plays on this. So some of these tracks are Art Taylor is on every track, but then so these were two different recording sessions, and so one of them was Art Taylor with Charlie Rouse on tenor and Donald Byrd on trumpet and Jackie McLean on alto, and then another session was a different band with John Coltrane on tenor and Red Garland on piano and Paul Chambers on bass. So there is so much great jazz on this album. This is a highly sought after jazz record for a reason. This is one of the all-time great Prestige albums. This might be my single favorite guitar album of all time, jazz guitar, and that says something considering how much good stuff Kenny Burrell and Grant Green have put out over the years. Bill Jennings, Enough Said. This is one of the most underrated albums in the Prestige catalog. This is one that is absolutely stellar that nobody ever talks about, and I could never get enough of this record. I could listen to this over and over until my ears bleed. This is so good. Piano Trio, Red Garland Groovy with Paul Chambers and Art Taylor. Amazing piano trio album. If you like if you're not a big fan of trumpet, you're not a big fan of sax, and you just prefer to listen to some piano with some accompaniment from a rhythm section, This is it right here. Good stuff. Here's Miles Davis's very first 12-inch LP ever on any label, The Musings of Miles. This is from 1955. And this is killer. So good.
We see a lot of European pressings of that today because it's in public domain in Europe.
Oh, yeah, that would make sense. Yeah, you're right.
So they press them in Europe and they send them here, and they usually sell for $18, $20. And you have it on vinyl, folks, but it doesn't sound that good.
Yeah. So, Adam, I'll tell the quick story that I was talking to you about the last time I was in the shop. In 1956, Miles Davis left Prestige and signed to Columbia. But the problem was that before he could go and record for Columbia, he owed Prestige 4 albums of material. So he took his band into Rudy Van Gelder's studio for 2 days and recorded 4 albums worth of material. And that material released over the course of 4 years as 4 separate albums. And they were all something with the Miles Davis Quintet. So here is Cookin' with the Miles Davis Quintet. This is the first one. This one came out in 57. So this was 1957. This has all 4 of these albums have the same band. It's Miles on trumpet, John Coltrane on tenor, Red Garland on piano, Paul Chambers on bass, Philly Joe Jones on drums. I mean, that is about as good as you're ever going to find a jazz band from that era. So this was the first one, Cookin' with the Miles Davis Quintet. That one's an original.
Would you show the text, the font at the top of that jacket? People can.
This one or the back?
The front.
Yeah.
So people can see the is raised.
Yeah, how it's kind of off, and that's what makes it kind of neat to look at, other than the actual sketch on the cover. But yeah, and this was not a Reed Miles album cover, but yeah. So this one's a reissue. This was the second album in that series, came out in 58. So it's Relaxin' with the Miles Davis Quintet. And this one's warming a spot on the shelf until I can find an original. And it sounds good, by the way. I mean, any of these Prestige reissues that you find in record stores, you can buy them with confidence. They all sound great. So no worries there. I only want an original for historical purposes. So this one is also a modern reissue. This one came out in 59. This is called Workin' with the Miles Davis Quintet. And, like I said, it's all the same band. And the material on here is just universally strong. All 4 of these albums are perfect 10s, every one of them. You can't go wrong. And then here's the last one. This is the one I got from you, Adam, from 1961. And this was the last one of the 4. This is an original. This is Steamin' with the Miles Davis Quintet. Prestige 7200. And so these are the 4 albums that got him out of his contract with Prestige, and so that he could go to Columbia and record things like Roundabout Midnight and Kinda Blue and all of the other amazing stuff that he did for Columbia from the late 50s through the early 70s.
Very cool.
So another guy that was a big staple on Prestige in the late 50s. Kurt, I've got a lot of friends that I do trading with, and there are some shops around Raleigh that always have good jazz. Adam's one of them. There's some others as well, and we are fortunate in Raleigh that we seem to have a really good funnel of old jazz records, and it has been postulated that the reason for that is because within a 2-hour radius of this area, you have a few major metro areas, right? You've got Charlotte, you've got Winston-Salem, you've got Greensboro, you've got Durham, you've got Raleigh, you've got Fayetteville, right? So you're talking 6 major areas, all which historically had very large African-American populations, which of course, in those days, that was a lot of the demographic that was buying those records. And so as the people who bought those records have gotten older and have aged out, a lot of their records have come to the market. And so I feel like a lot of it is just pure dumb luck based on where I live, if I'm being perfectly honest with you.
And I also think that because we have the Research Triangle Park and IBM, a lot of their employees came here. I think
New York,
a lot of cool stuff with them. And I also think they had the money that they could afford to go out and buy these records.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so now where they bought them, I would like to know.
Yeah, I mean, Blue Note and Prestige and Riverside all had they all had good distribution around around New York and the major metro areas. Or well, not the major metro areas. What am I trying to say? Around in New York City and the surrounding area, right? So if IBM was bringing a lot of people down here from Endicott and Binghamton and all that, they would have had access to those records, definitely.
Right, but when they came to Raleigh or Cary or Durham to live, where were they buying those? Where did you buy Blue Note? Where did you buy Prestige? That's kind of the big question for me that I haven't been able to get a handle on.
I might have an interesting answer to that a little bit down the road. I still got a few more that I'll show, but the very last one in the set, it has a bit of a clue to that, believe it or not, Adam. So you might be interested. So this is one of the greatest jazz albums of all time, Sonny Rollins' Saxophone Colossus. This has different cover art than the blue cover of him playing sax that most people know. The reason is that this is actually the very first stereo pressing from 1964. This album came out in 56, but it wasn't released in stereo until 64. And of course, because it was recorded in 56, it's not real stereo. It wasn't recorded to 2 tracks. So this is fake stereo, but it actually sounds really, really good. So I would have to find a super clean original in order to replace this. This is a great copy, fantastic play copy. Couldn't be happier with this one. This is probably my favorite Sonny Rollins album of all time across any label. Moving Out. This is a very, very early repress. This came out in 56, I believe. This repress is from about 58 or 59. It's beautiful. I mean, you can see how laminated and shiny the jacket still is. So it's gorgeous. Here's one that is always a great listen. Thelonious Monk with Sonny Rollins. So this is actually a Thelonious Monk album. And Sonny Rollins only plays on a few of these tracks, but this is an amazing record. This is a repress from about 58, 59. So yeah, love it. Yeah. This is a historical curiosity. Yeah, that's very true as well. Although, you know what's interesting about that, Elliot, is that I lived up in Boston for a long time. Mm-hmm. And, well, I lived in Providence, where I used to go into Boston all the time. And the record stores in Boston never had jazz. And Boston is such an academic hub in the United States. Yeah, I bet. I totally believe that, Elliot. Yeah. Yeah, because with Fort Bragg there, sure. Yeah, you're getting people from everywhere. So yeah, I bet you do find a lot of foreign pressings and stuff down there. That wouldn't surprise me at all. So here, this is a historical curiosity. It's a fantastic album, but it's also a very important album from a history standpoint. Tenor Madness is so this is a great Sonny Rollins quartet album. However, the title track is the one and only known recording in existence of Sonny Rollins and John Coltrane playing together, both on tenor. And I'm gonna just say it: Rollins completely burns Train on that track. But I digress. It's still, this is the title track. It's the only one Coltrane plays on, and it's the only known recording of the two of them playing together. Oh, believe me, I know. I lived in Providence for about 12 years, and yeah, the 45-minute drive to Boston was basically a day trip. Because as I'm sure you know, right in New England, because the states are so small, if you drive more than 15 minutes to do anything, you're going out of your way. I got a new job at one point while I was living in Providence, and my neighbor comes out one day and goes, "Oh, I heard you got a new job." I said, "Yeah," and she goes, "Oh, where are you working?" And I said, "Oh, I'm working blah blah blah." And she said, "Oh, what does it take to get there?" I said, "About 20 minutes." She's like, "Boy, that's a hike, huh?"
And to get from one side of Raleigh to the other side is 20 minutes.
Yeah, I know, right? Everywhere around here takes 20 minutes. Okay, so this is John Coltrane's. This is an original pressing. This is John Coltrane's very first album ever as a band leader. Prestige 7105. What's interesting about this, I know I've showed off when I did Blue Note, I showed off Coltrane's one and only album for Blue Note, which was called Blue Train. It's an all-time jazz classic. It's one of the gateway drugs. Let's do it, Kurt. I'd love to chat with you sometime. Let's make that happen. Thank you. I appreciate that comment a lot. Thank you.
Have a good night, Kurt.
Have a good one, man.
Hey, Steve.
Hey, Steve. So what happened there was when Coltrane signed to Prestige, apparently, as the story, the Blue Note offices a couple of weeks prior to that and asked to borrow some Sidney Bechet records. And Alfred Lyon and Coltrane had talked about a record deal. But Francis Wolff, who was the other founder of Blue Note, was the one that handled artist contracts, and he had gone home for the day. This is how the story always gets told. And so he borrowed the Sidney Bechet records, and Alfred Lyon gave him an advance and told him, "Come back in a couple of days. Let's talk to Francis Wolff. Let's get a contract signed," and da-da-da. Well, Coltrane never came back. And instead, he went and signed with Prestige a couple of weeks later. But he told Bob Weinstock, "Hey, I took an advance from Blue Note. I have to record an album for them. So part of the condition of me signing with you is that I have to go and I have to record this album for Blue Note." Well, here's the thing. This album, his debut for Prestige, includes precisely 0 original material. No Coltrane originals on this. This is 100% covers, which meant no publishing money for Prestige. Then he goes and he records that album for Blue Note, and it's all originals. So Blue Note got all of that publishing money from his original compositions. So that was probably a slap in the face to Bob Weinstock. But it's been speculated that the reason for that was because Blue Note would pay for rehearsal time. Prestige wouldn't. And so anytime, and this is one of the reasons why Blue Note recordings are so amazing and why the players and the recordings are just so spot on, is because Alfred Lyon and Francis Wolff would pay these guys for a day or two to rehearse everything before they actually went to Rudy Van Gelder's studio and recorded it. And so, and he would pay them to do this. Bob Weinstock wouldn't, and Weinstock never wanted to do a second take. He would always he always felt like the first take was from the gut. It was just the way it was supposed to be. And bam, that's it. That's why on like modern day Prestige reissues, CD box sets and things, there's almost never any alternate takes or anything else, because on the very rare occasion that Bob Weinstock would authorize an alternate take, he would just record over the first take. So, I mean, there is almost no alternate takes of any Prestige recording session. It's kind of sad. But anyway, so yeah, so Coltrane records this debut album for Prestige with no originals at all. And then he goes and records an album for Blue Note as a contract obligation and does all originals. So, last one from the Prestige stack, and this may answer your question. So this is an absolutely beautiful copy of Soul Train. This is probably one of John Coltrane's best records across any label. And this thing is practically near mint by just about even the most conservative grading standards. If it is possible for a 62-year-old record to get a near mint grade, this one would be close. The only reason it's not, you can see first off, the dope that wrote his name up there. But secondly, look at that stamp. So this is probably where it was purchased, Adam. and it was at Frankie's Birdland in Norfolk, Virginia.
I've had records with that stamp on it before.
Have you? Okay, this is the only one I have with that stamp. But, I did a little bit of research, and I managed to find the guy's obituary when he died, I think about 15 years ago, that owned that shop. But I couldn't really find a whole lot of information on the shop. I looked at Google Street View, and the building that the shop was in is long gone now. It's just an empty lot. But yeah, so, I mean, clearly there were shops down here that were selling that stuff. And, some of it may have just been, to cater to a niche market that wanted that stuff. I don't know, but. Oh, yeah, Katie, I'm sure. I mean, that was very, very common back then. And especially if you're into old jazz records. I mean, Adam knows as well as anybody that, I mean, people that owned old jazz records back in the day loved to write on the back cover for whatever reason. They like to be their own critic or whatever they were doing,
Absolutely. I bought that estate from the lady one time. She taught at North Carolina State University, and she taught music. And so there were jazz appreciation classes. And I got a feeling that most of those records that I bought from her, she got free from the university with a budget.
Could be. Yeah.
And so, I mean, if it sold for $4 and I gave her $20, she made a little bit of money.
Yeah. Well, and that goes into like this, right? So this Bill Jennings record, I showed a couple of these the last time I did Cocktails and Vinyl, but this came from the A.L. Johnson collection. And this was a jazz professor at Temple in Philadelphia. And his son, after he died, started selling off his records. But this guy loved to stamp his name 4 and 5 times all over the back of his records. But yeah, he was a professor. So, and Philadelphia is another place where you can find a lot of quality old jazz records.
That is so
plenty
true.
of that going around Philly.
That is so true. But yeah, I keep asking. Hopefully soon I'll find somebody who actually purchased records, in our area.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing of it is that we see way more Blue Note around here than we see Prestige.
Yeah, that's true. And I don't know why that is, because I mean, generally, if you were into jazz at that time, I mean, you'd be buying whatever, right? It didn't matter what label it was on. But back then, the labels like to have a look and they like to have a sound, so that if you saw something from that label, you knew what you were getting, regardless of who the album was,
Right. That is so true.
So the last few that I have here, and this is sort of on a Prestige note, is that Prestige in the very late 50s and in the early 60s, they had a sub-label that was called New Jazz. And New Jazz had a lot of left of center stuff that probably wouldn't appeal to like your casual jazz listener, but stuff that was but it was more stuff that that like was sort of on the bleeding edge, right? And so New Jazz was where they took chances with stuff, right? New Jazz stuff wasn't pressed in as high in numbers and that kind of thing, but there were some amazing albums put out back then. This one's good, and this one's not terribly expensive when you find it. This is Lem Winchester and Benny Golson. Winchester Special. This is great. Lem Winchester was one of those guys that he actually never really made a big name for himself except around his hometown in Wilmington, Delaware. He was a cop, and he played clubs and stuff on the weekends just to make extra money, and ended up getting a deal with Prestige to put out some albums. But I mean, this guy just had a regular 9-to-5 job as a cop in Wilmington, Delaware. Wow. And so.
Will you show the label?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Of course.
Elliot was saying he bought a collection from an elderly lady a while back and saw a Soul Train album in there.
Oh, and it was empty. It was just the cover.
Did you get it anyway, Elliot? I would have.
Oh, I would have too. I mean, somebody would buy, if the cover was in good shape, somebody would have paid you $30, $40 for the cover.
It looked good on the wall too.
Oh, yeah. So this is what the New Jazz label looked like. It was purple. You can see down at the bottom, it says a product of Prestige Records.
Okay.
And so all of these have all these that I'm going to show have the purple New Jazz label. But you know, talking about prestige and stuff, you kind of have to go into New Jazz because it was it was a very important part of Prestige's history. So and many of these albums, after they stopped the New Jazz imprint, many of these albums got reissued on either Prestige or on a budget label that they launched in the mid 60s called Status. And Status pressings sound like crap. If you ever find them, just walk away. I have a couple, but they are noisy and hissy. They were manufactured on recycled vinyl. I mean, they were a budget. That was a budget label for a reason. The sound quality just isn't there. This is one of them. So this is, you can see it says Status on it. This was on New Jazz, and this is a killer album. Roy Haynes on drums, Paul Chambers on bass, and Phineas Newborn on piano. But what's interesting, this was from right around the transition period. So you can see that the cover still says Status on it, but it's still New Jazz vinyl. Because what would happen is these labels, these small labels at the time, like Blue Note and Prestige, they didn't get the jackets and the vinyl put together at the pressing plant like the major labels did. They would order the vinyl from the pressing plant. They would order the jackets from the printers. And then they had people at their offices that took the vinyl and put them into the jackets. So finding, you know, jackets that shouldn't be with a particular pressing of vinyl is not uncommon at all on Prestige and Blue Note stuff because of that. Because a lot of times, you know, they would have vinyl left over and they only needed to press up covers. So they would press up new covers, but put the original vinyl in those covers because they still had a bunch in the stockroom kind of thing. Here's another New Jazz classic. This is amazing. Dorothy Ashby and Frank West in A Minor Groove. One would not normally think that a jazz quartet consisting of harp, flute, bass, and drums would have any swing to it whatsoever. This would prove that theory wrong. This record is fan-freaking-tastic. This is, oh, somebody would like to say hello. Say hi,
Amber.
Oh. This is another great piano album from New Jazz, Impressions by the Mal Waldron Trio. Mal Waldron is one of the unsung heroes of jazz piano. This guy played on so many recordings, and his style was just great. He's so great to listen to. Eric Dolphy.
Hello, Marilyn.
Hey there, Marilyn. Eric Dolphy, Out There. So I don't think there's a better name for an Eric Dolphy album than Out There.
Wow.
But yeah, this is an original pressing, and amazingly, this one has no writing on the back cover. But yeah, this one, this is a killer album. I mean, it's definitely a little bit, a little bit left to center, but you know, if you can handle your jazz a little bit more than plain vanilla, good stuff. And then the last one from the New Jazz stack. If for those of you who may like vibraphones in jazz like I do, Teddy Charles Coolin. Teddy Charles was a great vibraphonist, and there's a great band on this. And there you go, Mal Waldron again. So this is a killer session and great stuff.
Very cool. I bought a record once from Disco GS, and I was so excited to get it because it was a Flamingos record. When I opened it, it had the wrong record in it. I was so mad.
Oh, I hate that. I hate that for you, Katie. That sucks. And you know, I can say that's happened to me once or twice too. But luckily, you know, every time the seller made it right and would, you know, refund my purchase price or whatever, and I just send the record back to them. So, you know, it's a pain to have to ship it back, but you know, the good sellers, I mean, you know, they'll take care of you at least. Now, you know, if the seller argued with you about it and tried to say, oh, well, you just took the record out and put another one in, then yeah, I'd be steaming mad. But yeah, that sucks. I think that's happened to all of us at some point or another if you buy a lot of stuff on Discogs.
Yeah. I like those laminate covers too. It's really sad when they start delaminating.
Yeah, and you know what the great thing about that is, Adam? As a matter of fact, let me give me 1 second. I wanna grab something because
okay,
this is something that I think is important when you like old records and they have laminated covers. It gives you a bit of an advantage. So this is a nice rare Blue Note. Lee Morgan Volume 3. Okay, now hold on a second. I'm going to, do I have the ability to share? I do. Okay, I'm going to share something, and I want to show you the before and after pictures of after I managed to save this album cover, because it comes down to having a laminated cover. So let me show you this. Just give me 1 second. I want to find... I need to find the before photo. 1 sec, I'm looking through.
all right.
Sorry, I don't mean to have, idle time and stuff. Here, okay, here we go. I got it. Yeah, it's right here. Okay, here we go. Okay. All right, I'm going to share this out. So 1 second, share screen. Okay. 1 second. I have to have permission. Oh, I won't be able to. Yeah, I'd have to quit browser in order to do it. All right.
You should be able to share.
Adam, I tell you what. I have to grant Chrome permission to do that. And if I do, I have to quit out of Chrome, which means you would lose my video feed. Let me, let's see. Let me text you this photo, and can you bring it up?
I think so. Email it to me.
Okay. Yeah, let me.
RecordKrate at Gmail.
RecordKrate at Gmail? Okay.
Yeah, I think it'd be easier to do that.
Okay. Just a second. That'll only take a second. Let's see. All right. RecordKrate at Gmail. Yep, there you are. Okay. Here.
What time is it, Shawn?
It's 9:46.
Shawn is now spinning TV.
I'm sorry.
And I was, gosh, what time is it? It's probably lunchtime. Happy Thanksgiving, Shawn. He's probably having lunch, Thanksgiving lunch. No, it's not that far in advance. Today's Tuesday, so it's probably lunchtime there.
All right, there we go. All right, Adam, okay. I just sent it. So if you can share this out, I would love for people to see this.
Okay. Okay. StreamYard, please.
Did you get it?
Mm-hmm. There we go.
Okay. So you can see on the cover, you can see how there was Sharpie on the front, right next to where it said Blue Note. There's Sharpie there. And then you could see how the paper was rolling up there at the bottom. And so this is where laminated covers come in super, super handy, because look at this. This is the exact same cover. All of that Sharpie came off with a magic eraser, because it was a laminated cover. Never, ever, ever do that without a laminated cover. But if you've got one, you can get Sharpie and stuff off with a magic eraser. And then I was able to use good quality acid-free tape to pull down the paper. That rolled up paper pulled right down. And so I was able to use some nice clear acid-free tape that won't damage the cover and won't yellow over time. And So yeah, so I managed to clean this one up quite a bit. And you know what's sad about this cover is that the vinyl plays very good plus. Like it is visually high, very good, and it plays low, very good plus. This is a fantastic listen. It's just that the cover is roached. And so, you know, prices on these when the cover's in this condition, they don't fetch collector prices, right? Which is great for me because, again, I want these to listen to them. I don't want these to have them sit on a shelf. And so, so this was a great score for me.
Yeah. I wish Dan was here. Dan can tell us how to get rid of or how to reduce and lighten markers on a matte finish paper. He's
really?
Yeah, he's I can't remember the term, but he's worked with books and paper for many years, and
that's awesome.
Preservationist, archivist, book repair person. He can bind a book and everything, so that's cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome. Yeah, and then I'm so glad we have that. And if you ever find, you have to find it vintage, folks, but if you ever find a product called glass wax is wonderful for cleaning record covers, but
really?
it's not made anymore. Oh. And we need an alternative to that, folks. I got a Blue Note Turrentine live at Minton's in the wrong cover. Yeah. It's worth $1 million to play that record every so often. Turrentine is so good.
Oh yeah, I love Stanley Turrentine. Them old deep grooves. Marilyn, that is so true. I mean, and Adam and I have had that discussion multiple times as well, that, you know, we have clearly lost something in the vinyl manufacturing process in the last, 50, 60, 65 years. Because yeah, those old records from the 50s and even into the early 60s, those things could look like they were backed over by a Mack truck and still play fine. And, I'm sure whatever formulation they used back then was probably a lot more durable, but it wasn't as environmentally friendly and stuff like that. So, and it was probably more expensive to produce. So as cheaper methods became available and it was more environmentally friendly, but I mean, yeah, if you had a modern pressing that looked like it was backed over by a Mack truck, it'd be destined for the trash heap because it would sound so horrible. But yeah, a lot of those, and that, when you like old jazz pressings, that's where you save money, is by buying the slightly lower condition copies, because the collectors don't want them and they play fine. Yeah. If you want them to play them and you want to hear those jazz records the way that they sounded back then, which is why I like them, because I want to hear that record the way that history deemed it to be. And those 50s and 60s records just have a sound all their own that just can't be duplicated today. And the remasters, they all sound good, but they just don't sound the same. Yep,
that's true.
They do. Yeah. They absolutely do.
Even if they look like they won't play, I'll pick them up anyway, because they have a place on the wall, if nothing else.
These are pieces of American history, man. They're incredibly important, and I'm just watching my cat walking up next to my turntable. That's great. We love that. Yeah, I mean, these things are pieces of American history. They really are. And oh yeah, the covers are definitely sturdy. They were all made with very thick cardboard and things like that. So it.
Well, they do, Elliot, when they're clean, they do, and you never find one flat.
Pardon me, one moment.
Uh-oh, Kitty's in trouble.
Yep. Yeah, this is the face of bad Kitty.
Oh, sorry, wrong. Yeah. Oh. I was going to see the cat up close.
You're right, Elliot. Those Dynaflex vinyl, they really did sound amazing, even though they were floppy as hell. I have an original pressing of the Kinks' Muswell Hillbillies that is Dynaflex, and I cannot believe how good and quiet that is.
Yeah, I mean, people ask me all the time, what does 180 gram mean? I mean,
nothing.
We had 95 gram with a Dynaflex. And so,
yeah. And yeah, you're right, Marilyn. Rudy Van Gelder created a sound all his own. And, the funny thing is that he always mastered his stuff for record players of the time. Shawn, I use a spin clean. That's always been my go-to. One of these days, I'll probably invest in a VPI machine, but at $600, well, you know how many records I could buy for $600? Just saying. but yeah, at some point I'll probably invest in a VPI machine. But right now, the spin clean works great for me. So back to Rudy Van Gelder, right? The guy, he's a legendary recording engineer for a reason, right? And his studio is hallowed ground when it comes to jazz. Some of the greatest recordings in the history of jazz, arguably most of the greatest recordings in the history of jazz, were recorded there. And Rudy Van Gelder had a sound all his own, and he was very particular about the equipment he used. He didn't want other people knowing what equipment he used. If somebody was in his studio taking a photo, he would take the inners of his microphones and he would put them in different cases from another manufacturer, just so people wouldn't find out what type of microphones he was using or anything else. Like, he was very superstitious about that type of stuff. And but he mastered all of his albums for record players of the time. And that's what's amazing to me, is that while, unless you're playing it on vintage equipment, you'll never hear it the way that it was designed, that it was heard back then, because you're not listening to it on period equipment. But at the same time, those records, even though they were mastered for period equipment, they sound incredible on modern equipment too.
They do. But Rudy, he only had the resources that surrounded him, and he found the resources. And it was more than just which microphone it was. It was the placement. It was the room. It was
everything.
And so, he had a talent for that. But more than anything, he had an ear, and he was able to.
And one of my favorite stories about this is going back to Prestige. Right. So Blue Note, he said that, at his busiest time, that he would have certain days blocked out for certain labels. So like Savoy would be in on Tuesday, and Prestige was in on Wednesday. Blue Note had 2 days. So I think he did Blue Note Friday and Saturdays. Right. But Alfred Lion was always very particular about what he wanted. And so Rudy Van Gelder had to do everything exactly the way Alfred wanted it for Blue Note Records. So he said that any time that he would want to test out a new piece of equipment or a new mic placement or something like that, he would do it during Prestige, because Bob Weinstock didn't care. He said that most of the time Bob Weinstock was more interested in reading the Wall Street Journal than he was about the jazz being produced. And so anytime he wanted to test out a mic placement or a new piece of equipment or whatever, he would do it during the Prestige or the Impulse dates. And then once he got it perfected and got it sounding the way he wanted, then he'd start doing that with Blue Note.
Well, here's what Elliot says. All you need is a $30 dry vac, spin clean, and a $30 vinyl vac wand, and you can clean a record as good as any RCM
record cleaning machine.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, that's an interesting idea. Might have to try that.
Might be a little louder.
Likely.
Yeah, that's awesome. Wow. How about that? Wow, Shawn.
Yeah. So I saw your unboxing there for the stuff that you got for Black Friday. It looks like you're going to have a pretty good stock.
Thank you. I wish I had quadruple that, but yeah. And the thing of it is, I'm checking tracking now, and I'm not going to have everything. I'm probably not going to be able to make a second video.
You know, that's been a real problem with Record Store Day the last couple of years, is shops not getting everything that they ordered by the time that it arrives, or by the time Record Store Day happens.
I mean, I ordered 900 copies of the Rolling Stones' Let It Bleed, and I got one. And
have you had problems though with like getting with like, you know, they tell you, okay, you know, you're going to get this many of this title, this many of this title, but when it comes time to actually ship everything that's coming to you, that you don't get it by the time Record Store Day, like you get it the Monday after?
So Record Store Day titles are allocated, and so I really don't know what I'm getting until it's shipped.
Right, but that's my point. Have you ever had any problem with the stuff shipped to you not arriving in time for Record Store Day?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, and you know, I could play those games of using 5 different distributors, and then bam, next thing you know, I'm caught up with having to pay for 5 different distributors and getting more than I wanted.
Right.
And I say, oh, I only want 2 of those. Sorry, you committed to them. Yeah. And so I end up with 20 copies of a record that may not sell as fast because I wanted to get a couple.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's also, I want 3, I order 8 and hope I get 3 because you're always allocated. And and then and you know, I have one title that I'm putting out Friday that was Record Store Day drops 2020 October. So it came in late, and I was like, well, I'm just going to hang on to it till Black Friday, because what am I going to do? First person shows up. I mean, that's not very fair. So I just held on to it. Wow. Yes, exactly, TC. And so I was told that the last shipments were going to be overnight, but if they were overnight, I would have had them today. And so what can you do?
That sucks. And see, that's the thing, right? Record Store Day is supposed to be about supporting your local record store. How are people supposed to do that if you're not getting all the stock you need? You know, that's I think one of the frustrating things to me about Record Store Day. That, and you know, sometimes depending on the title, sometimes it seems like some of that stuff benefits eBay and Discog sellers more than it benefits music lovers and local record shops, if I'm being perfectly honest.
Well, we do everything we can to prevent the
yeah, I know.
Prevent the flippers. Elliot, you have a wrench, so you can put a link to your channel in the chat, sir. So yeah, we do that. Katie says she got our record store and they only got one Chuck Berry. One in the whole city.
That's
what was that, 1,200 pressings, Katie? 12 or 1,000? I don't think my Chuck Berry is going to be here. My George Harrison is not going to be here. You know, when people leave at 10 o'clock, they're not going to check back by.
No.
And the only thing is,
they won't.
I can put it on eBay.
Yeah, it's too bad. Oh, Adam.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, Shawn.
I got 2 quick things to show you, because at one point you had asked me, and at the time I only had 1. However, I have added another 2. So hold on. Yeah, here we go. So when we were talking about Blue Note a couple of times ago, you had asked if I had any Blue Note 10 inches. And I only had 1 at the time, and it was by Mez Mesro, the weed king of jazz. And I have since added 2 from the Modern Jazz series, the 5000 series, which is where Miles Davis and Hank Mobley and Clifford Brown and all those guys were from. This one, Hank Mobley Quartet, 10-inch. This is an original. Oh, yeah. There you go. So this is a beautiful copy. And then another Another Blue Note 10-inch 5017, also from the Modern Jazz series. Dizzy Gillespie's Horn of Plenty.
Oh yeah, I've had that one before.
Yeah, this one isn't terribly hard to find, and yeah, I mean it's Dizzy Gillespie, right? I mean the guy had a lot of name recognition, and he was very popular in his day. So yeah, I mean as far as Blue Note 10 inches go, his stuff is not usually terribly hard to find, and not usually very expensive either. But that's a great disc. So anyway, I just thought you might like to see those.
Absolutely, thanks, TC. I don't like that Horn of Plenty cover. I think it's
no, I don't like the cover, but man, the music speaks for itself.
Absolutely, I think it's kind of weak for Blue Note, that's for sure. But it, hey, thank you, Blue Note.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
wow. Yeah, so many cool things, and I mean, I have to look at it this way, Shawn. I'm getting some wonderful titles for Record Store Day, Black Friday. Some people will come in and they're going to buy a record and they're going to be super excited about it. Yeah. They're going to go home and play it. They're going to share it with their friends. They're going to talk.
And that's what it's all about.
And so there you go. And yeah. Hey, take care, TC. We'll see you sometime or another.
See you later, TC.
Yeah. So
yes, sir.
Marilyn just subscribed. Absolutely, yeah. I like her.
Hopefully, I'll be able to do another one of these at some point, and Adam won't be sick of me showing old jazz records.
Well, I'm not sick of that. Absolutely, yeah. So I'm going to bring myself back up here. Yeah. So.
Yep.
But thank you, Shawn, so much for joining tonight.
Always, man. I love doing these, Adam. I'm happy to do them anytime you want, man. I love doing. Very much enjoy this. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I love doing this. I always look forward to it.
Absolutely. Maybe we can show some common rock and roll and alternative.
I got plenty of that. All this, all rock and pop, man. So yeah, I need to do that at some point. I'm a big metal, punk, and jazz guy, but yeah, I mean I've got huge amounts of pop and rock that I listen to all the time too.
Oh yeah. Well, Marilyn, if you didn't see it the last time we did it, which was probably 3 weeks ago, showed a bunch of cool Impulse records. And
yeah, Marilyn, if you want to see some more, you can go back and look at the other 2 cocktails and vinyl that I've done, and also the coffee and vinyl I did. It was coffee and vinyl number 88. So if you look that up on YouTube, you'll see it. And I go over some other jazz records there. So just search through Adam's channel and you'll find them.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and of course, I think Marilyn's been here before, but coffee and vinyl also in the mornings.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be here Thanksgiving morning too, and I'm gonna sell Thanksgiving night. I'm gonna do a sale of some recent new arrivals and give people on the YouTube a chance to buy it first.
Cool.
Yeah, so there we go.
Well, yeah, man, if you do a coffee and vinyl on Thanksgiving, I might actually be able to stick around for the entire thing, because it seems like every time I try and join coffee and vinyl, I've always got some sort of hair on fire thing going on at work that ends up diverting my attention.
Right, and if I start at 8:30, sometimes some people have to leave at 9 so they can report to work, like TC and Kurt, and which is totally cool. And so sometimes they go back and watch the playback and cool things like that. But it's all good, folks. It's all good, and I'm happy that anybody comes and hangs out with us, and I'm happy for everyone tonight hanging out with us. And thank you so much for coming and cool things like that. Yeah. So anyway, I'm going to rock and roll.
Very good.
Yeah. Well, say. And I hope you have a wonderful evening, Shawn. And thank you so much for hanging out with us and sharing some records. I'm always looking for people to come and share cool records for coffee and vinyl and cocktail and vinyl. Coffee and vinyls almost every morning at 8:30. Cocktails and vinyl would be on a Tuesday night around 8:30 p.m. And
all depends on if you've got a guest lined up to do it or not, right?
Yeah, and that's really good for, and I only do it when I have a guest, and that's good for people who live on the East Coast and the Mid, and then, of course, some people that can't come on at coffee and vinyl because of their daytime job obligations. So there we go. So you can always reach out to me. I think I shall put the email address in the chat. I told it earlier, but Gmail. Okay, there you go. Yeah, so there you go. There it is. I'm going to rock and roll. You do the same.
All right.
All right. Good night, everybody.